Raise your hand if you're stressed and overwhelmed. Raise your hand if you have gut issues. Surprisingly, those two things are linked via the nervous system. When we are overwhelmed with stress, it can start to manifest as physical symptoms, and one of the key ones of those being digestive issues. That is the focus of today's story. It's a great one about a family who had been under chiropractic care and gotten great functional results, and then hadn't been in for a while. They were looking for a miracle. They were looking for help and answers and hope, and found their way back into their chiropractor's office. I'm Jenna Quinton, founder of Adjust Your Media and host of What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate. We're going to talk about digestive issues, the nervous system, about telling our stories, about finding our way to health and vibrant function, and also how, if you're a chiropractor, how you can learn and grow more in this philosophy and principle yourself. So today on What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate, we have Dr. Pete Gay from Family Chiropractic of Kennebunk, Maine. Welcome.
Thank you.
So glad to have you here. Your wife was telling me, she was on the podcast, and she said, oh, Pete has a great story. You have to have him on too. So I can't wait to hear this. Tell us who got better under chiropractic care and how chiropractic helped their body to heal itself.
Well, we all have great stories, but I think probably when she spoke to you, I just told her about this story. So I guess we'll go with that. It was literally the day before we were closing for the 4th of July holiday break. And I was in here in the morning, adjusting for the morning shift. We ended at 12:30. And somebody walked in just as we were closing. And I didn't recognize her at first, but it was a woman that we used to take care of her and her family, grandkids, kids. And I hadn't seen her in a while. It had been a couple of years at least.
Yeah.
And she showed up with her grandson, who she always used to bring in. Of course, he was taller then. But at this point, the grandson was 6.5 when she brought him in. But she said she was driving down the road, coming from the hospital with him, saying, at her wit's end, saying, we need a miracle for him. And then when she said that, she turned her car and drove to our office looking for a miracle. So I said, boy, that's a lot of pressure to put on.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So I said, what's going on? And she said, well, he can't eat, he can't drink anything. And it's been a couple of weeks. Doctors don't know what's wrong with him. He's been to the hospital. He has had all kinds of tests. But the moment he starts drinking or eating, he gets severe distress and pain in his gut, and he can't do anything. And she says it's been heartbreaking. They're doing all kinds of tests, can't find anything. And she said he's got to go back to the hospital tomorrow for some other type of study that honestly I wasn't even aware of. She started telling me all the details. She's an RN. So she's telling me all the details. I'm like, okay. And she said, so I remember when we first brought him in years ago, I said I was looking for a miracle for him. He never slept before. He would not sleep at all. And he started getting checked, getting adjusted, and he started to sleep. And she always talked about it being a miracle. So fast forwarding, I haven't seen him in a little while. She shows up looking for a miracle. And I said, we can check him. We can adjust him. And she goes, that's all I'm looking for. I said, all right, bring him over. And so we checked him, we adjusted him, and it was right before we were leaving. So I said, keep me posted on how he's doing. If you need, I'll meet you down here and we'll check him again. And she says, okay, great. And holiday happened. Later that afternoon, she texted our office and said, so I got to tell you, and her exact words still up here, I don't want to jinx myself, but he's already drank water, eaten watermelon, and it's been half an hour and he hasn't cried or screamed once. He's in no pain. Wow. And she said, I don't want to jinx it. I said, well, you're not going to jinx it. It's just keep me posted. Later in the week, honestly, I got busy with the holiday. But during that break, I said, let me shoot her a text and see how she was doing. And she says, I got that second miracle. He's doing great. He's had no pain. I went back for all his tests. All his tests came back negative, and they don't know what was wrong with him, but all they know is he's better. She got her miracle.
So I love so many different parts of this, in part because you provide such a continuity of care and such a safe place that she knew she could just come there, you know, just even driving there on autopilot. And so that for sure, I want to know, like, what are some ways that you, I think it's partly just your communication, but how do you create that environment that somebody feels like, oh, of course I could just go back there?
I mean, I just think we're just very open, honest, and sincere. What we feel and what we communicate is the truth. You know,
Yes.
if somebody disappears, I never scold them for not being here. I just say, welcome back. Let's get in here. If they're coming
Yes.
looking for help for their grandchild, who am I to turn them away? I mean, she got a message, go here, go now. And
Yes.
I don't think that's my place to turn that away ever. And I think they sense that. They know that. We're very open, honest. And even if somebody leaves, the door is never closed. We don't burn
Yeah.
the bridges. They're always welcome.
I love too that you have this point of they had done the medical process, so that they had looked to identify if there was something in particular. We always talk about the three T's, trauma, toxins, and thoughts. So they had looked from a medical perspective to see, is there some overgrowth of bacteria? Is there some food allergy? They were doing their due diligence in that way. And so I think that that is such a great thing in this story, that what you were helping with really was nervous system function. People say, there's more neurons in the gut than in the brain, and there's more communication going from the gut to the brain. And so if that was disrupted, of course, chiropractic is going to help restore that connection.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of chiropractic, is that I didn't even understand, honestly. And I've been practicing a while. I mean, I'm familiar with a lot of things. I'm like, I didn't know most of the tests she was talking about. The doctors
Wow.
didn't know what was wrong with him. I didn't, but it doesn't matter. All I know
Right.
is if we can get him on the table, we can check him and adjust him and get him free of any interference and allow the innate wisdom in his body to do whatever it needs to do. That's the best that I could do for him. So that's what we
Yeah.
did.
Another point that I think is interesting is that he had been under care for some symptoms of dysfunction before. This kind of makes me feel like, would you agree that kids don't grow out of things? Maybe those subluxations, the symptoms just change shape.
Right. Well, it
Yeah.
also made grandma realize, you know what? He needs to be back here. We all need to be back here. And, people sometimes need to go through these things to find their realization of what works. And sometimes they need to leave and come back to say, life was better when I was clear and adjusted.
Yes, exactly. I feel that in myself too. Me and my kids got adjusted yesterday, and it had been just too long since we'd been checked. And so it is that good realization of, oh, yes, this is what helped him when he just wasn't living life fully clear and it was dysfunction and whatever in his nervous system wasn't able to rest well. Well, now it's not able to digest well. It's still the same body, it's still the same nervous system, just expressing different things.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I love it that you opened up that channel to communicate. How easy is it for us to get hold of different professionals in our lives? Where do we have the personal phone number, like our accountant or something, where we're like, no, I am freaking out about this right now,
Right.
And so I love it that you have that. Not only are you opening channels of communication in the body, but you're opening channels of communication with each other.
Yeah. I think people appreciate that. They know we're genuine and we're here, we care, and we believe in what we do. So whatever we got to do, if we can remove a barrier to coming in, let's do it.
I like that. I wondered if you would tell us a little more of your story, because I believe you were in pharmaceutical school when you started chiropractic for some different issues you were having. How did that all come about?
Yeah, I still to this day tell people my chiropractic career, my chiropractic adventure started at Rutgers College of Pharmacy, where I was an undergrad and I started off there. And long story short, I was one of those kids who was sick a lot. You hear these stories a lot, but it's true. I was sick a lot and I had a lot of problems with allergies to the point that it was affecting my breathing, especially at certain
Wow.
times of the year. I was in pharmacy school, and so they said, here, try this pill or try this puffer. And none of that was helping. But at the same time, I was learning about how these drugs work in the body. And the more I learned, I said, this doesn't make sense. It just wasn't resonating with me. It
Yeah.
also, I didn't want to keep taking the toxic side effects. And then it got to the point that my breathing got bad enough that they said, well, we can give you some steroids, prednisone. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to start taking that. So we're going to do something else. And at the time I was working in the summer at a summer job at a small pharmaceutical company in New Jersey, just sorting papers and stuff. And the CEO's secretary had a sister who was a chiropractor. And she said, you got to talk to my sister. She's a chiropractor. And I was like, huh? Because I didn't know. I'm like, I think a chiropractor is somebody who treats athletes for sports injuries, because I really didn't know
Right.
what it was. It was something
Right.
like, but I met her one day, they were having lunch, and I talked to her a little bit, and I thought, wow, something about what she said resonated with me and clicked with me. And I said, yeah, I'll go see. I want to check that out. And I got checked. I got adjusted. I loved it. I loved getting adjusted. I loved the way my body felt. And I kept going. And within about probably 3 months, all of those things went away. And I came
Wow.
to my really bad season where they wanted to give me puffers and pills and nothing. And my life was great. And so it was early enough in my major that I decided to switch to a bio undergrad. So I switched and got a bio undergrad, and then I continued on and went to chiropractic school. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. And there I
Yeah.
went.
It's awesome that you started off with understanding just that chiropractic was helping you to function better. Because I can
Mhm.
imagine my kids were outside doing scooters like in circles on the driveway. It's hard for a kid to be active if they can't breathe. I'm sure
Right.
that it wasn't easy for you in high school, college to be as active as you might have been if you literally were not able to breathe or had all of these allergies and things. I love asking people how they found chiropractic or how chiropractic found them because my husband is French and his port of entry to chiropractic was you said you thought sports chiropractic and helping athletes with injuries. Well, my husband knew horses were adjusted on racetracks, like racehorses were adjusted.
Mhm.
And so in his mind, if it helps a racehorse to perform better, then I would like to perform well. I would like to run the race of life at a high level. And I've never heard anybody else who that was their first thought in chiropractic was horses. But I like to mention that just because it is that thought of I would like to function better. I would like to perform better, not about the cure, but about the restored connection aspect.
Yeah. And when I went to chiropractic school, just to clarify, it wasn't like I totally understood the big idea of chiropractic. Like I knew
Sure.
everything about it by any means, but I knew it was something greater than just a bad back. Like it changed my life, and it was something that changed people's lives. It was from there that I obviously learned more about what chiropractic really is. All I knew was something bigger.
Yeah. So tell us a little more about how you learned and grew to know more about chiropractic. Sometimes I like to say the phrase your TikTok. How did you learn and grow in that philosophy?
How did I learn and grow? So, it's the kind of maybe overused saying is everything happens for a reason, and it does. And then there's times in life you say, well, what's the reason for this one? But then you figure out later, if you give it enough time, you figure out the reason. So I went to New York Chiropractic College. I did it because that's where the chiropractor that I went to went. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't too far from there. I grew up in New Jersey. I'm like, not too far, and I'll go there. I got accepted and I went. And then when I got to school, we had some great teachers at the time, but a lot of it, what was being taught wasn't really what I thought it was, even though I didn't really understand. It seemed a little bit more like a physical therapy curriculum at times. But I do remember someone I met early on before I went to chiropractic school and said to me, there's this thing called DE, go to it. Knew nothing about it. For some reason, it's just stuck in my head. So between my first and second trimester at New York, we had a break, and we used to get today's chiropractic magazines from Life University, what was Life College at the time, with Dr. Sid on it.
Yeah.
And we always used to look at them, and there was this little tiny ad, this big square ad in there that said, come to Life DE. And it was during the break between there. And I was hungry, like, I'd like to learn more about chiropractic. So I
Mm-hmm.
gathered up 3 other guys in my class that said, we're on break. You want to go? And they're like, we're in New York. It's in Atlanta. I said, we'll get in my little Pontiac Sunbird and we'll drive down there. And we did. We got in my little Pontiac. We drove down to Atlanta. We all shared a room because we were students.
Yeah.
We crashed in there. And once we went in there, we walked into that room, and this is a long time ago, there were really a couple thousand people in the room. And the energy just in the room and the stories, that was forever changing. That was it. Once we went there, there was no turning back. And that's where I got my foundation of chiropractic. And we would still drive down, we were forever changing. We would still drive down to Atlanta every chance we could to go to DE.
Yeah. How long of a drive is that?
17
16.
hours. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long.
It doesn't, when you're a young, hungry student, it's an adventure. Like, let's just do it.
Yeah, I love that you used the word hungry because it's such a good adjective there. And I think that if we all get a little bit more of that, I think we get complacent and full and fat and comfortable and we just sit there. But like you said, on the other side of that hunger was energy and stories and the principle, and that was transformative. And I think we think of hunger in a negative sense like, I'm so hungry and it's so negative. But in this sense, it's such a good motivation to go looking for something to eat.
It was more of a wanting, like
Mm,
I wanted more.
yeah,
A lot of people are like that.
yeah. So, one question that I love to ask people, and this kind of loops in with that, is what is innate? Because it kind of feels like that is an innate wanting, an innate drive. So, how do you explain what is innate?
I mean, innate is basically our connection to God and to the universe, and it's the wisdom that runs everything in our lives and runs everything in our, doesn't just run our bodily processes and our heart and hormones, but your thoughts, your
Mm,
intentions, your path in life, where you're supposed to go. And the more that we trust in it, whether it's with the health or just the course of your life, the better off we'll be.
I
So
love
I
that.
something to still use to this day.
Yes. And I think that it is something that we do. We get so disconnected from it. And I know people will say, oh, it's because we've got cell phones in our hands all the time and things. But even like when I watch old movies, I'm like, we've always found ways to be disconnected, whether it was the newspaper at breakfast or, whatever it might be. We've always found ways to disconnect from innate.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to do.
Yeah, just to be so distracted with all of the things. So my other question is what are some of your favorite ways to share these big concepts with patients? Do you like to use analogies or stories or do you keep it simple? How do you share all of this with your patients?
Simple is a key for me. I like simple things. I'm a simple person. I like simple stuff. But stories, conversations, one on one or in groups, talks, but just sharing but I try to keep it simple. Analogies are always good. I try to liken it to something that they already know about. If they're a farmer, I liken it to farming. If they're a builder, I liken it to building.
Yeah, I think that that's so good. Even just, yeah, tailoring it to them because, again, there's just so many areas of life. If I was talking to an accountant, I don't know anything about accounting. That whole world just is terrifying. And so just bringing it into what they would understand. So if somebody gave me an analogy that used accounting, I would just be like, I'm not connecting, I'm not resonating with this. So I love that you tailor it to each person. So I am going to put show notes where people can find you, connect with you. I'm also going to put show notes to DE because if people are interested in Dynamic Essentials, it's 4 times a year and they can come kind of see that for themselves as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you and Dr. Katie are so warm and friendly, and so many other people who are frequently there. So it's always a good time talking about stories and chiropractic and all of those things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing this story today. We're going to wrap it up for today and share another story next time. But thank you so much for being here and sharing this today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored.